Welcome everyone to Overcome podcast. And today we have a very special guest here. She not only is an Olympic medalist and Judo World Champion, but she is Canada's first Olympic medal in women's judo. Welcome to the show, Jessica Klimkait.
Thank you for having me.
Jessica, what a beautiful career and a lot of accomplishment in the last years. And I could go all over to the beginning of this journey when you were four. I read that you start very young. But I want to talk a little bit about your prep to the Olympic Games
hmm
because you had an injury in the beginning. I think it was a knee injury, right? And on top of that, there was the whole COVID difficult to train, and I listened to one of your interviews that you gave recently, actually this year after you got bronze on the World's Judo, and you were talking about the ups and downs. So tell us a little bit more about this injury. Was this during a training? Was this during a competition? Was a single movement that caused this, or it was overuse? What really happened?
hmm Um, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure which particular injury you're talking about because,
More than
as
one?
a yeah, I've had a couple to my knees. There was two sort of major ones during the lead up to the Tokyo Olympics. So the first one was actually at the 2019 World Championships. I felt really good, really prepared, like really wanted to get on the podium that day. And it was actually in the warm up where I over rotated and something in my knee sort of popped. It was, I think, the meniscus, but either way, my knee was instantly swollen. I couldn't put weight on it,
Wow.
and I'm expected, to fight. And I go over to my physio, the team doctor, and I'm trying to get her to tape it in certain ways that will kind of make it feel sufficient enough for me to step on the mat and fight. But I knew, internally that the moment I stepped on the mat, I would not be ready to fight as I normally do.
Hmm.
So I just remember being in the tunnel trying to go through my normal routine before I compete and I can't even jump up and down and if you know my style
Hmm.
I'm
Yep.
I'm always jumping everywhere. So um I think I lost that fight in 20-30 seconds. I just or maybe a minute, it was really quick. Um and that was hard because I could have decided to not fight, but when you're in that, you know,
Yeah.
being an athlete, you just learn to push through
Hmm.
things. But I knew that I wasn't,
But when
ready
you
to do that.
entered the mat at that moment, were you in pain since the beginning?
Uh, I would say no. Like the adrenaline sort of took over, but the way that I fell, the way that she threw me, I tried to put weight on my leg and it just couldn't withstand the weight and I couldn't defend, so I sort of just popped over and she threw me for a pawn. It was against a Russian player and that obviously was difficult because it was the last World Championships before, the expected Tokyo Olympics
Hmm.
and my teammate had a really good day that day. So, well, she had won. So it was definitely a difficult day. And if you want me to move forward to the next injury, the next
Well,
knee
before
injury,
we go there,
yeah.
after you finish and everything, how did you treat that injury? It was just normal rehab, physical therapy, or did you have to do any type of intervention?
Uh, after the World Championships, always there's always usually a break. So I, took my 2 weeks off, rested completely, stayed off of it, and yeah, I had to go through phases of rehab and phases of strengthening it, just to make sure that it was ready again. And I'm not sure if I think I didn't compete until the winter. I don't totally remember, but it wasn't a strenuous
Hmm.
rehab, but the injury itself was enough to, take me out of the competition that day, and it was probably the worst timing. So,
Yeah. Now
yeah.
we fast forward to the next one. It was the same knee.
Ooh. Honestly, I don't know. I've had bursts on my knees. I don't know which one is last, and little meniscus things. Thankfully, nothing serious. Like I've never had to have surgery, or it wasn't ever a major ligament. But this next knee injury, it was after Dusseldorf in 2019. And that was sort of when there was like whispers of COVID,
Hmm.
and nothing had quite yet shut down. But I remember, yeah, my knee was really bad. I felt like I couldn't train properly. It was swollen. It was irritating me. And I went to see a physio, and they're like, "Oh, you should get an MRI. Like you should get this checked out." And just 2 days later, the world sort of shut down, and COVID,
Yeah.
happened, and training, our center was closed. Tournaments started falling off of the IJF schedule. And then eventually it was saying that the Olympics was postponed. And it wasn't until maybe 5, 6 months later that I was able to see a doctor, and that we were able to see that, yeah, there was a meniscus tear. So in the context of if that year had ran normally with no
COVID. Yeah.
COVID, you know, that was already March, and I think the expected fight off was maybe supposed to be April or May. So, again, I'm not sure I would be able to prepare from that, because the only thing that sort of helped my knee recover was the fact that there was no training because of COVID. So, yeah.
And during that time throughout COVID, so all the gyms were closed. Did you try to stay a little active and doing some things on your own?
Yeah, definitely. I was really lucky to get some equipment, some gym equipment, and I didn't really do, other than maybe elastics 1 or 2 times a week. Um, I was doing a lot of physical preparation, things with the Olympic bar, circuits, lifting. So I was doing maybe about 1 to 2 hours of um, exercise
Hmm.
per day. I think, it was impossible to stay true to the
Yeah.
typical training regime. So I felt like, 1 to 2 hours a day, depending on what I wanted to do, was enough that, sort of kept me active and motivated, but didn't sort of, it wasn't unrealistic too, because, you can't really
Eh,
push yourself to where you want to be with that circumstance.
Right. And no judo, or did you do any type of bands, uchikomi with bands and things like that?
Yeah, I did. I had like elastics, pretty good thick elastics. So it was, yeah, I was doing that maybe every other day, or like at least a couple times a week, to kind of keep the movements and things like that.
So if you think about a lot of your prep during this time, envisioning the Olympics, you did on your own. Um, because after everything was open, it was very a short time until the Olympics, right?
Yeah, if you put it that way, yeah, I guess, a large part of the year prior to the Olympics, I was training by myself, probably not really thinking that it had anything to do with my preparation for the
Oh,
Olympics.
really? You never really thought I will keep training because I have this vision to be there, and you were doing just to stay in shape.
Well, I knew I had to keep in shape for something. Did I know what it was? Did I know when it was going to be? No. Like there were so many unknowns during that time,
Hmm.
and I don't think I was training every day thinking, we didn't even know when we were going to compete next. We didn't even know if the Olympics was happening. So it was really just about finding some kind of training that left me satisfied, but not, you know, it, yeah, it was, I didn't think that I was preparing for a major event at that point. I was just trying to get through day by day and keep things short term sort of visioned.
And then comes the Olympics. You got bronze, and I also remember watching one of your interviews, and you said that initially you were really sad, missing the opportunity to get the gold. But at the end of the day, you were really proud, and I think that that's the main feeling, right? I mean, it's a really overcome situation for you to go through all that and then be able to be on top.
Hmm. Yeah, I think naturally, and probably most athletes can relate. Um, you're really hard on yourself when you don't perform to the capacity that you think you can, or when something so major like an Olympic gold medal feels like it sort of just slipped away from you. Um, and I remember losing that semifinal match and just feeling totally defeated and just sort of, my motivation was really low. I didn't come there thinking that bronze was the best that I could do. So,
And how did you
um,
put yourself
yeah.
together again to regain motivation and come back stronger?
Well, it was a really quick turnaround because at the Olympics you have the semifinals and the finals and the repechage matches. They're all condensed. So I had lost that semifinals match and I went back and I was getting interviewed, and that was hard because a lot of the people interviewing me, they didn't totally understand the sport, so they were like, "Oh, what happened? You look like you were winning. Why were you getting penalties? You were so active." And I was like, still absorbing it myself and not really even knowing how to explain that sometimes it's the reality of the
Yeah.
sport that, people have different judgments of what's going on. So, yeah, I remember just going back to the warm up area and just feeling really defeated. And I could see my opponent, and she had just won her repechage match. So naturally, she's, on a little bit probably more of an up than I am. And I had just recalled that on day one, I remember I went to watch the competition and I saw athletes that had lost their bronze medal, or sorry, their semifinal match, and they had continued and they went on and they won bronze their bronze medal match. So they had lost their semifinals, big upset. They looked defeated, just as I had felt, but they pulled things together and they won their bronze medal match and they stepped on the podium and they still had a smile on their face. So that's sort of where um, I put things into context a little bit, and I sort of stepped outside of how I was feeling and figured that, if I don't find some kind of motivation or push, then I'm going to lose the chance to like walk away with any of the glory at all to be on the podium. So that was sort of my
Motivation.
um yeah, to see if other people can be happy. I'm sure after the fact I'll be pretty happy, much happier obviously than if I'm on the podium than
Yeah,
not
and
at
it was
all.
a huge deal for Canada, right? I mean, it was
Yeah.
the first time, first Olympic medal, first
Yeah.
bronze Olympic medal for a woman's judo. This is amazing. And
Hmm.
I bet you that at that time you didn't even think about that.
No, well, slightly, but um I don't I don't usually, when I enter competitions, I'm not like a win or lose, or, I have to get this result kind of person. I'm more so just like I really want to feel good that day and I want to do good judo that day, and that's sort of, if I can do that, then things come together for a result. But
That's great
so I wasn't,
because
yeah, so I
you don't put
wasn't.
pressure on yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like, when you think about win or lose, you kind of skip the steps or the mental steps that you need in order to win, right? So you kind of get a little like anxious and stressed, and you just want to get to the end goal, which is throwing and ippon and all these things. But there's so many things that come between, taking a bow and throwing. It's every little thing between, and that's the details that I'm working on, every day in my training and things like that. So,
So
those were the
with
things
this
that,
mindset,
yeah.
have you ever faced a situation where you lost, and although you have a competitive spirit and everything, but you lost, and but you were kind of happy that you did your best? Does this happen quite often?
Um, usually, usually if I'm on, like, and I can feel it and I'm in a really good sort of state. And if it's rare that I lose feeling like I'm sort of putting all the pieces together the way that I should. There are some instances where, I felt as though I was doing everything that I should and everything that I could. And I lost in the end. And those fights are probably the most frustrating, where you sort of feel halfway through or near the end, something just slightly ticks off, and um, it doesn't make the fight like come together. But um, yeah, so
That is good. I like the fact that you said that when you are on, you're on. So, which means that if you are feeling good, the likelihood that you're gonna win is very high.
yeah, and I think most athletes can relate. There's sort of this feeling that you have in your stride and in your movements on the day of competition, and when you step back after that day, you can acknowledge, that it felt really good, every fight,
Hmm.
every piece of the puzzle.
But it,
But yeah, but there's definitely times where, things don't feel well and you scrape by and you're still able to win. So those are different days as
but
well.
there are also situations where you feel great, but then on the other side, there is like a major rival that you already lost, and it's like now it's time to pay back. There is also the mental aspect, and how do
Yeah.
you handle situations like that? I'm pretty sure you face those type of situations.
Yeah, I mean, usually once you get into the third round, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, your chances of fighting a stronger opponent definitely increase. And um, sometimes, yeah, you have the stronger side of the pool, things like that. So I think, when I come upon those opponents where whether we're back or forth or where I've never won against them, it's not really something that I shy away from,
Hmm.
like, ever. I view it more of like a challenge. Like, what can I produce out of this fight? What kind of judo can I see myself do? Can I prove these things to myself? These pre these predetermined thoughts of like confidence that I can win. Can I prove that to myself? So it's more so viewing it as a challenge than it is something that's
In other
threatening.
words, it doesn't intimidate you. It actually gives another boost of energy to go there and do it.
Yeah, I would say so.
That's great. And the other thing that I think is super interesting that you said is you always talk about what I can do, challenge myself. In other words, you're really not concerned about what other people say, what the opinion of others is more about what can you do to challenge yourself.
Yeah, I think um, all along, like especially in the last race to the Olympics, what kept me going wasn't me trying to prove anything to anybody else. I wasn't trying to prove things to like other athletes, to other coaches, or anything like that. It was really just to myself. Like I really wanted it myself. I wanted to prove certain things to myself, and I think that's like the purest form of motivation, like intrinsic motivation, at least for me. I know other people, they can gather motivation from other other sources and situations, but yeah, I wouldn't have in general come this far as an athlete if it just wasn't always coming from me, the motivation, I guess.
Now, it was always like that, or you got mature over time and became what you are today as far as this mental aspect? Or since the beginning, when you start competing, like very young age, you had the same feeling?
I think I definitely had a very similar feeling. Obviously, over time, I've matured and evolved and sort of restructured things of how I maybe mentally approach certain matches or anything like that. But I think that trait of just, really, when I was young, I just really enjoyed being on the mat and I wanted to see how good I could get. And it was always about that, like, how good can I get? How much better can I get at these things? And how much better can I get at these attacks? Can each time be better than the last? Like, I was so interested in that kind of the sport and that kind of competition, like more of a competition with myself than I was about, the opponent, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, once I started stepping onto the international scene, it was like, I want to beat these major players, but it was more because I wanted to prove to myself that I could, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. That's an excellent mindset, and it's interesting to see that you always wanted that since the beginning. So throughout this journey of getting mature and try new things on the sports, because now you already master, you already know your game, you know where you need to adjust according to the situation. But when you were like in the beginning of the judo journey, would you insist in certain throws just to try to get better, or you basically try a couple of times and if it didn't work you move to a different one? Because there's a lot of judo players that they have like one
Hmm.
major throw and they always search for opportunities to get that throw, right? But in
Yeah,
order for you to be proficient on that, it takes time, and in the beginning you
yeah,
try a lot of things. So how was your
yeah.
approach in the beginning that you were building your game?
Uh, since since I was young, I had a really good coach. His name is Kevin Doherty, and he did a really good job at exposing us to all different kinds of techniques: shoulder throws, uchimata, foot sweeps, counters, things like that. So from a young age, I had a good amount of exposure to all different kinds of throws. I think I definitely gravitated to shoulder throws. That's sort of where my strength was just as a kid. I mean, I did try to integrate Uchimata and things like that, but it's just I never found that I could really find those things in competition to execute. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I think yeah, I just sort of evolved in that path of shoulder tech, kept going towards that, and then slowly came into, okay, can you do it with two sleeves? Can you do it from one lapel? Can you integrate things like Tayatoshi, things that sort of are true to a shoulder throw movement, but you can add some variety in to maybe not make it so um, stale and repetitive with the same grip. And as I like grew older, um, yeah, the coaches that I was with, they just sort of continued to sort of shape my strengths and add to it, and add things that would maybe complement it, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and you touch on strength. When did you start incorporating conditioning strength training to your routine? Because at the young age, you probably were only focused on judo, and then at some point you had to, okay, now is I need to get more stronger. I need to start lifting and incorporate this type of training.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I wouldn't say that I was doing weight training, but I was doing a lot of body weight things. So, at a young age, I was doing rope climbing, I was doing chin-ups, I was doing push-ups. There was a lot of emphasis on this kind of training. Maybe when I was about 15, 16 years old, that's when I started to do weight training in a more like serious kind of way, with the purpose of understanding the movements, building strengths, understanding, how to like do bench press and cleans and deadlifts, all that stuff, in order to gain muscle and things like that. So yeah, I would say it was around 15, 16 years
And,
old.
and for you today, how important it is this type of training? Well, I mean, how you divide your schedule? Do you train judo every day and you live 3 times a week, or how do you divide that?
Um, it's it varies. I think it can be 2 to 4 times a week that I'm in the gym, and those kinds of sessions can vary. But I think that weight training to me is just as important as my training on the mat. I don't think I would feel as strong as I do without my weight training. It's something that I like enjoy, and I also gain confidence in, because I it's a very qualitative sort of or quantitative sort of thing. Like, you see that you're lifting heavier, you're hitting certain numbers. things like that. Um, yeah.
And when you go to judo, I know that you have a train today because that's why we were able to get this time frame.
Yeah.
Today is probably judo, right? Later on.
Uh, yeah. Tonight we're gonna do judo. Yeah.
And you prioritize technique, you prioritize uchikomi, you prioritize randori, or all of those at the same on the same day.
Every day is a little bit different. So it's usually a mix of technical training, some situational drill training, like things at a higher intensity. And then there's also randori, all that kind of stuff. But I think every player is different. There's some players on our team here who prefer randori, and that's really what's going to make them feel good. That's where um, that's their pathway to make their training successful. And although I do like randori and I absolutely need randori to feel good as well and to know that I can execute certain things, I also really enjoy technical training, and that's also where I put a lot of my focus and attention.
One of the things that I saw leading to Tokyo was that the female Japanese Olympic team was doing cross training. They were actually training jiu-jitsu to get better on the waza. Uta Abe was doing a bunch of jiu-jitsu in the prep, and you saw that they had a lot of matches that they finished Newaza. How emphasis do you do to Newaza?
Um, I think we try to do a relatively fair split of working on Tachiwaza versus Newaza. Um, would I say it's 50-50? No, obviously, majority of matches are done in Tachiwaza, but I would say a lot of my focus and attention goes towards transitions and just a more realistic version of Newaza in competition. Um, Sometimes Newaza Randori can not be true to how people really scramble on the ground during a tournament. So that's generally where the focus is, and I think that's fair to say. Well, I don't know for sure internationally, but I think more attention is being put towards transitions as well. So
Yeah, train different type of situations of counter and everything, because even on the latest this year's Worlds there was a lot of finish on the ground, and it feels like it's growing a lot. I'm not sure if it's because there are more matches there are more matches that are finished on the ground. Meant for Japanese, they really like to finish on the ground.
yeah, I have noticed that a lot of matches are. I actually have noticed that I also get more time on the ground. So I think the refs
Yes,
are.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so I think the refs are understanding, that certain situations can evolve on the ground, and I think they're giving more time to let the athletes explore that. Whereas before it was sort of like you get one shot to try something and it's over. Now you're sort of seeing people try one thing and slowly it turns into another, and then there's a score. So I think that's sort of the shifts that you're kind of seeing, like, and why maybe more matches might be ending on the ground.
And as far as cross training, do you also have that a lot in Canada, like judokas cross training with jiu-jitsu, or not really? It's more like just judo.
It's not typical. I think I've done a little bit of jujitsu, but I wouldn't say that what I've learned to do on the ground came from jujitsu. I think jujitsu can really help like have more spatial awareness on the ground. I think it can help you understand, how to defend certain things, and if you're rolling one way, what might come next, those kinds of things. But it is still kind of like a different sport in the way that I haven't taken techniques necessarily from jujitsu.
But you don't
But
official,
that's just me
of
though.
course, yeah, yeah. But official, you don't train jiu-jitsu. You don't really go,
No,
yeah.
no. I mean, I've done it, but not in a serious context. Just, I've tried it and maybe learned a couple drills or things like that. So,
Cool, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I really enjoy watching some bit of this cross training. Now, this year when you got bronze at the Worlds, um, in 2021 you actually won. When you started the 2022 and you had your first match, I know that you said that you always try to do your best, but the back of your mind, you came with any pressure to be the current world champion, or you just put everything aside and say, "Oh, well, this is a new competition. I really don't care about what I did last year."
Yeah, I didn't really enter the competition feeling like I had anything extra on my shoulders. Obviously, it was something I acknowledge. You can't not acknowledge that. But um, I think I compartmentalized that pretty well. I wasn't, fighting with any added stress because I was the current world champion. Yeah.
And it was this prep for this Worlds 22 better than the 2021, because 2021 it was right after COVID and everything, right? So this year was theoretically supposed to be a little better prep, was it?
I mean, definitely there was more, I guess, flexibility with schedule and with planning and things like that. Last year, it wasn't even sure if I would even go to the World Championships. Like we really did not know uh, how it was going to be decided, who would represent Canada at the Olympics. So, there was more time to anticipate this World Championships and more time to plan and things like that. But I think every prep is a little bit different. And I mean, I've only done maybe 4 or 5 World Championships. So, you know, like I said, every prep is different. So I'm not really sure if I can say if it was better or worse or this or that. I stuck to the plan and I did, what I had to do in order to finish the prep and go there that day.
But
Um,
again, when you
but
enter the that competition and after the first match, you were feeling pretty good, right?
um, well, if I'm being honest, I could tell that I wasn't feeling as good as I had hoped. But when you're going through a competition like that, it's really important to not let um, the way that you feel totally interfere with how you're performing. But that's much easier said than done because I did sort of experience that. I wanted to execute certain things that I didn't in my first and in my second match, and that sort of led me to the third match, um, the quarterfinals where I had lost. And I, could have continued to like sulk in that feeling of why am I not executing certain things. Um, but um, yeah, I kind of had to, again, similar to the Olympics, I just had to understand that, in this next match, there's a winner and a loser, and I have to make sure that it's me. And it kind of gave me that extra sort of motivation and boost. And I would say that the last 2 fights of that World Championships, I felt more like myself and better than I did the first half of the day.
Awesome. And
Mhm.
what is the plan moving forward? What are you training? Are you gonna compete? You still compete? This year is pretty much done, I think, and then now is really looking to next year. So what is the plan now?
Now the plan is to I will go to Japan for the plan. This is supposed to happen. I'm supposed to go to Japan and train, and um, I'll be gearing towards masters at the end of the year. And it's a little bit of a different, the next 8, 9 months are going to be a little bit different because we already have another world championship. So it's going to be really important to make sure that I'm balancing, 2 world championships within 8 months and also fitting some competitions between, but also resting enough and also training hard enough. So
And
I
then
think,
there is the Olympics again.
yeah, yeah, just like right around the corner. So it'll be a quick couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, with such a tough schedule of competition, training, and like big competition, not something small. What is your recovery routine? Do you do anything special to recovery? Cryotherapy? Do you do anything to, keep yourself healthy?
Um, I don't do any sort of specific treatments, but I do see uh, osteopath once or twice a week, and I do sort of get massages if they're needed, like sports massages. But yeah, I've never sort of um, like got into the routine of using hot and cold baths and saunas and this and that. I do like them, but they're just not, a big part of my recovery
But
routine.
probably, as far as nutrition, you stay clean all year long when it comes to diet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are times when you kind of have to like take a break
Yeah, of course,
because,
yeah.
always eating the same way like 365 days a year, it's gonna feel a little repetitive. But yeah, generally, I would say 80% of the year I'm eating a certain way and, looking at food as something that fuels my performance rather than something, that
Because you don't have
I don't
really
have to
to
think about.
cut weight, right? You don't need to cut weight for the competition, do you?
I don't cut too much weight, but I still have to lose a few kilos. So, but it's nothing that's difficult because I try to stay as low as possible in my, I guess, not competitive when I'm not competing. I
Right.
don't I try not to get too high. So,
Yeah, that's a good strategy because a lot of people they are going up and down all the time,
hmm
and it puts a really it's really hard on the body.
hmm
But I think that this happens more on the heavyweight or medium heavy things like that, where they have to probably walk all year long with 10 kilos or 5 kilos more than usual, and which is not your case.
no, 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 no. But I think it is like a little bit, the heavier you are, the more weight you can lose before a competition. The lighter you are, you can't maybe get as high, but maybe 4 or 5 kilos to a lightweight is the equivalent to like 8, 9 kilos as a heavyweight. So it it's sort of like that, I think, where um, yeah, the heavyweights they might sit heavier, but they can also cut more, I think.
Now, one last question here before we wrap up
hmm
about nerves. And I always love to ask this question to all athletes that I interview because I've seen a pattern of answer, and I just want you to check with you with so much experience. How's your Do you get nervous before a competition? And if you do you think it's normal to get nervous? Do you control this anxiety, or for you it's just like entering the mat to train?
hmm Um, I wouldn't necessarily say that I get nerves, that I get butterflies. I think I kind of anticipate the day a lot, so I start to maybe overthink the day or the competition day. Um, but not so much anymore. I think now things are very routine to enter a competition. Um, like I said before, I sort of view, maybe difficult situations or nerve-wracking situations. I kind of shift that into something that's exciting and something that's challenging, and I don't, look at big tasks with a negative sort of connotation of what could go wrong and what I absolutely need to do. I try to spin everything as something that's like positive, something that can challenge me, something that's going to really push me. Um, I mean, I remember when I was younger and I would be nervous and coaches would say, "Well, that's a good thing. It means that your body and your mind is getting ready and it means that you're, sort of alive and ready to fight." And that was something that helped me when I was younger. Or you know, you can view the way you feel as stress or you can view it as excitement.
Yeah.
So um, those are maybe, some things I was told when I was younger that sort of might have helped shape me to, not be so nervous today. But yeah.
Even on that Olympic where you entered to get the bronze and you said, okay, I want to bring back a medal. I need to do my best. At that point, it was all or nothing. Were you with the same calm mentality, focus?
Um, yeah, I would say that, like, I walked into that fight knowing that I had to do, like, at at the end of the day, that fight was just another fight that I had to win. So it was just exchange by exchange, imposing myself and doing the things that I needed to do. Of course, if I took a step back and was like, "Oh my God, this is like, such a big opportunity, blah blah blah," like I I prefer, or maybe I'm lucky that naturally I don't care what this result means for anybody else. So it was just about me and what do I need to do? I need to just do my routine and keep imposing myself and things will naturally happen like that. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
Mainly when you are on the situation like that, representing a country, and you like able to isolate all those things and just focus on that at that moment. It's really something that not everyone is able to do, and it takes time to get that way. I'm pretty sure
hmm
that you've been working over time to get better on this because, as you said, when you were young, you did get nervous.
hmm Yeah, I think everyone might have their different approach to stressful situations like that. So that's just mine. Whereas another athlete might totally excel with, under like acknowledging the bigger picture, acknowledging that, this is for their country and this has never been done before. And, I can, pave the path for
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. But um, it was not
It's almost like you
about,
say,
it
"I'm
was,
gonna put all the drama aside,
yeah,
and I'm just gonna focus on judo,"
yeah,
right?
yeah. And it really wasn't about that for me. It was about, I've been involved in the sport since I was four. It's just, I love this sport and I want to just keep doing my best and keep trying to get better. And that was just another stepping stone along the way to, prove that to myself. So,
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. Thank you very much for sharing this insight. Honestly, very different from many answers that I receive. So, but it's a good thing. It brings a different perspective. This is great.
yeah,
So thank you very much
cool.
for sharing this because even when we think about someone like Ono Shoei, right? I was reading an
hmm
interview that he said that he was super nervous at the finals in the
hmm
Olympics
hmm
because he said the pressure on his shoulders was really big,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and other people they carry that pressure to the mats.
yeah. 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 I think, everyone is so, so different that we're all going to have our different approaches and our different routines and our different mindsets. And that's what's really cool, especially in a combat sport, because it's, mindset against mindset.
Hmm.
So that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. All right, Jessica. Thank you very much for taking the time on your busy schedule to record this. I truly appreciate. I hope that you have a great prep for your upcoming masters, and hope to see you again on the Olympics next year.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
It was great. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today's podcast. Stay tuned. We have more to